to talk a little bit about. Our very good friend Joe.
64 years old and married.
To Sally, of course.
Of course.
And just so that you know, Joe happens to currently be earning about $2,000 a week, about $104,000 a year. So he's a reasonably compensated individual, not a big dog,
not a little one either,
but not a part-time little dog either, etc. So when we reviewed the package that was there, again, there were three elements. One was a pay separation agreement, which basically gave him 2 weeks of pay for every year of service, up to a maximum of 52 weeks. And that was kind of cool.
Right, so that's about $104,000.
In his particular case.
Right.
Also, now, what we did forget to mention was Joe is 65 years old.
64.
64, going to be 65. Actually, when this severance buyout occurs, which is supposed to actually happen by the end of June. Mm-hmm. And in this case, one of the benefits he was also offered was an 18-month COBRA premium package.
Right, a little stipend to pay the premiums of COBRA.
So Joe, of course, he's thinking, this is great.
He's going to get an extra $10,000.
I'm going to get an extra $10,000 to do this, and the answer is,
no,
hey,
you're not.
Joe.
Woohoo!
No way, Joe, because if your name was Jose, we'd say, no way, Jose.
Companies are generous, but unfortunately, they're not going to pay you for benefits that you don't get.
Right, because we know that when you turn 65, COBRA, for COBRA purposes, Medicare becomes your primary coverage that
right.
you're eligible for, and therefore it's considered the substitute. So
you have other qualified coverage available, therefore COBRA doesn't apply to you.
So Big Joe, guess what? You're not going to get that part of the package.
So he misses out on the $10,000, but that's really okay because the $10,000 was there to help subsidize an expensive monthly premium. Under 65 years old, COBRA can potentially run as much as $700 to $800 a month, right, depending upon your policy and age. So it was really there to help out with that, but you're already going to be paying less than $200 a month for your health care, so.
Right. And what's nice is he had a couple of other small separation bonuses, and the total package for him was kind of nice. It was going to run about $130,000 if he was to decide to leave. Now, the real question becomes, is he in a position to do so? Would he feel comfortable? Could he move on and be able to do that? So interesting with Joe and Sally is they happen to be what I like to call a two-bucket family.
Joe's money is Joe's money.
And Sally's is Sally's, and then what happens is they usually put in together, they each make contributions for the common good, mm-hmm, to deal with their overhead expenses. They each keep their own accounts, etc. And this isn't unusual for us to necessarily see. But in the planning process, Joe said, look, I'm bringing home right now about $5,000 a month today, after all taxes and expenses, etc. And what I want to do is I want to maintain that level of income because
separate and apart from Sally.
We're spending it all. Right.
Oh.
So I want to keep my lifestyle going. So we said, great. We know you're not going to save money, my friend. You're going to do your thing. So we did, again, we really planned for this kind of in a vacuum for his. So as usual, we start the analysis. We have to take that $5,000 and gross it back up for tax purposes, right?
Exactly.
We used a 20% rate, which really was 15% Fed 5 state. And the truth of the matter is he's probably not going to be in that high of a tax bracket anyways.
That's right. So really what Joe needs is about $6,000 gross.
Right, $6,000 gross. We know that he does have Social Security eligibility. It was running about $2,500 a month. Because Joe earned a nice wage over the time period, he was able to reach the maximum benefits for his age at that particular time. And that would really leave him a deficit at this point of about $3,500 a month.
But Joe also has a pension.
Yes, he does. He had worked for Ralston
Nestle Purina.
Thank you, Nestle Purina, for approximately 30 years. And so he also had a pension benefit of about $2,000 a month. Kind of nice. So
that is nice.
So we're kind of whittling down his income needs. So at the end of the day, he really needed a cash flow to be created from his retirement plan assets of about $1,500 a month, or approximately $18,000 a year. Now, in our planning paradigm, we like to follow what we call the prudent 4% rule, which is the advisor's rule, basically saying that we believe that over long periods of time, assuming you have a good asset allocation, one that would be considered balanced, moderate, you should be able to pull 4% over a long period of time, even through up and down markets.
That's right. And so in order to do that, Joe needs about $450,000 of assets.
Right. Now, what we neglected to tell you is
Joe has a 401k.
No. Exactly. So, yeah, Joe does have a 401k on top of it, and his current balance is $465,000. So
You mean $645,000?
Must be dyslexic.
Dyslexic.
Great. On both. What can I tell you? The paper's a little too far from the desk today. I apologize on that one. So he has $645,000, which means that he really has assets in excess of his needed. We like to call it the money.
Right, almost $200,000 right? Of excess. That's incredible.
Life is good, and then obviously Sally's still working. She's doing her thing as well. So, Joe did have a couple of other questions for us, as most other folks do. One of the options he had available to him was whether he would take the pension plan as a pension income, which we assumed in the model here, or a lump sum.
What to do?
Well, when we're looking at these things, Joe is married, so we know that basically he's probably not going to be taking or even really considering the life-only pension.
That's right, because he doesn't want to sleep on the couch.
Exactly, and should he die prematurely, what happens is Sally's not going to get any continuation of that income stream. Unless
he selects one of the other alternatives with a survivor benefit, 100, 75, 50.
Right, and really, as we know, for him to even want to choose that life-only option, Sally would have to sign off on that, and we know...
Have it notarized.
That's not happening.
Unlikely.
Right? That's very unlikely. So he's looking at a joint and survivor benefit. If we were to look at the 100% joint and survivor option, we notice that if we took that monthly payout...
It's $2,000 a month.
Multiplied that by 12, $24,000, and we divided that by 6%. What a prudent amount, which we would call a decent deal, a good, et cetera, deal, might end up being somewhere in the area of around $300 and some thousand. The lump sum offer they were offering him in this particular case was about $350,000.
So right in that range.
So he was in the range. So really, what we're talking about then is it a good deal? Is it not a good deal? There's several factors that we're always discussing with clients, and again, everyone's situation is a little bit different in terms of what their priorities are for their goals. So let's just go through a couple of these, right?
Right.
We know that Joe's married to Sally. They also have children. And if you do elect a pension, we know that especially a joint survivor one, that benefit to the surviving spouse will stop at your death, and the pension plan keeps whatever capital in theory is available that's there.
Right.
If you take the lump sum, though, you do have the possibility
of passing some of those assets on to your heirs.
Exactly, assuming that you don't run out of them. And one of the things that we like to do, especially for our clients, is when we're doing their cash flow game plan, and we come down to that magical number, which is how much income needs to be generated through your investments, we like to say, how much of that money would you like to be in the form of a pension?
Right.
Right, in a form of a guaranteed income stream for life.
Because aside from having access to pension plans as through your employer, you can access
other
vehicles that will allow you to create what we like to call a personal pension. So luckily, people that did not work for companies that offered pensions as part of their retirement plan still have access to creating some additional guaranteed income.
Right. And, in our analysis here, what we assumed is that because we were doing this sort of two-bucket approach, was that Joe really needed that pension plan income to make his lifestyle work.
Right.
What if he didn't? Taking that lump sum basically would say, okay, great, taking that pension plan, he could take the pension benefit payments each month, pay the taxes on it, and then reinvest the money. And then he's going into a taxation situation again, right? Because the interest or capital gains would be taxed on those assets. So if we could actually create a pension to be delivered at exactly the time that he and Sally needed it,
for the amount that they needed,
exactly, would be a valuable aspect. So that's something to consider. Do you want to keep the money? 2 is health. Health is always something to consider.
Right, because really, if you have what you would consider or feel to be a shorter life expectancy, because what a pension does is you're turning over the asset that the company's deemed at $350,000. If you don't receive $350,000 in payout, then really the pension company, your retirement plan was able to keep some of what you earned over your lifetime.
Yeah, and again, these are forms of annuities. A joint and survivor annuity, a life-only annuity. So the other thing that we would be testing for him is the third one is, and also, you were right about health of Joe, but also think about Sally's health.
That's true. If you elect the 100% to the survivor and Sally predeceases you, you took a lower payout on a monthly basis in order to create that benefit. So either you have to live longer,
right,
or again, the pension company, the pension plan ended up coming out ahead versus what you were paid out.
And that's certainly something, as well to consider. The next thing we would think about, because pensions, one of the biggest pension that most folks plan on as a part of their long-term game planning is Social Security, right? Based on, we haven't talked about Sally or what her income currently is or what her Social Security benefits would be potentially there.
Because even if they're a 2-bucket family, according to the IRS, they are 1 bucket.
At income tax time, you're right.
Because they happen to be
That's
filing
right.
jointly. If they were filing separately, that might be different, but they're filing jointly, so they're 1 bucket.
Yeah, no question about that. And let's just assume for fun that that Sally had maybe been a part-time. Maybe she was a full-time mom for a long time, and then she went back on a part-time basis, and maybe now is even going into full-time status, so that the level of her Social Security benefits wouldn't be very significant.
Right.
They might even be considering looking at the spousal benefit. Her electing that because she wasn't even able to do half of his.
Right, and I think that's just as a side note, I think many people, unfortunately, the media doesn't do the greatest job of explaining what's happened to Social Security benefits. You still have access to the spousal benefit. You just don't have as much flexibility. So it is important to take a look at that to make sure that, if you are at the precipice here of electing Social Security benefits, if half of your spouse's benefit is more than your full benefit, you really want to take a look at potentially being able to elect that benefit depending upon your situation.
Yeah, because it
could be a couple $100 more a month.
Right, and as you said, the problem is that these elections now are kind of unified.
Right, they've been restricted.
That's right. So in the old days, you could have said, hey, I'll take the spousal benefit and I'll let mine grow and then take mine when it passes it up. It doesn't work like that anymore.
No.
The other thing is that I think the big one here is for those of us youngsters that were born after January 1st of 1954, where we had the change in the benefit thing, is that, there's a couple of
things.
But the big one is that your spouse cannot elect
the spousal benefit unless you're taking it. Actually taking your own benefit. And the big difference there used to be that, for example, if you wanted to allow your own benefit to grow, but you still wanted to access some Social Security benefit, all your spouse had to do was file for their benefit and immediately suspend it, which essentially means they filed with Social Security, but then they told them, please don't send me my benefit. So that benefit continues to grow. And then the spouse has the ability to elect the spousal benefit off of their spouse. Now, the way that it works, if you're born after January 1st, 1954, that first spouse needs to actually be receiving the money into their bank account for you to be able to elect the spousal benefit off of that, which really does change a lot of people's planning.
Yes, and again, this is for married spouses. If you're divorced or you're widowed, or widower, those are different.
Right. If you're
those are survivor rules, and those are actually those weren't covered in the same way.
Exactly. The spousal benefit for divorced individuals never required even the divorced spouse to have elected filed and suspended their benefit, because the government figured out maybe you two don't work too well together. So they don't
maybe you're not talking anymore.
Exactly. They don't hinge each other. They don't hinge your access to your benefit on your divorced spouse. And also, if you are a widow or a widower, this did not impact that benefit. However, you're still subject to, a discounted benefit if you're younger. So,
and getting back to Joe and Sally, especially if we had a discrepancy in terms of Social Security benefits, and Joe's thinking maybe what I need to do is I need to push my Social Security benefit off into later years so I can actually raise what the potential either spousal benefit would be when my spouse assumes my death,
or the survivor benefit.
That's right. Or if, Joe doesn't elect that 100% pension benefit to the survivor, maybe they only elected a 50% benefit. Well,
how do we make some of that income up?
Right, and a lot of plans, especially union plans, don't necessarily offer these 100% benefit survivor options. So all these things have to be kind of brought into a whole planning context, and that's why we love to do these on our whiteboard.
That's right, because what we're looking at here is 3 different plans.
Right.
Joe and Sally are both alive, enjoying retirement.
Sure.
Joe or Sally has passed